I met a traveler from an antique land who said it was vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor, while those passions read, which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things. The hand that mocked them and heart that fed. And on the pedestal, these words appear. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works. Here mighty and despair, nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal rack, boundless and bare, the lone and level sand stretched far away. Now, in the second point, we are going to know about life and some memorable poems of P.B. Shelley. P.B. Shelley, the eldest son of Timothy and Elizabeth, is one of the younger and prominent English romantic lyrical poets. He is also called an epic poet. His ideas about love, liberty, and God are unconventional. He takes his education in Eton College and University of Oxford. He starts his writing career with a Gothic novel. His highly radical social and political views become the main hurdles in his popularity during his life. However, his poetry gains better recognition after his death. The major romantic elements found in his poetry are love of nature, imagination, melancholy, supernaturalism, Hellenism, beauty, idealism, and subjectivity. He has written some popular poems as In Dejection Near Naples, To a Skylark, Music When Soft Voices Die, The Flower That Smiles Today, Ode to the West Wind, Adonis, an elegy on the death of John Keats, The Mask of Anarchy, Ozymandias, Mutability, and Prometheus Unbound is a four-act lyrical drama, is also popular work of P.B. Shelley. Now I come to the third point, that is sonnet and its type. In this part, we are going to know about what is a sonnet and what are its types with its features. A sonnet is a short poem of 14 lines with a fixed rhyme scheme. The great Renaissance Italian poet Petrarch is called the father founder of this format. His sonnets consist an octave, that is first 8 lines, and a sestet, that is remaining 6 lines. The octave often proposes a problem or concern that the sestet revolves. The first line of the sestet is called turn or volta. It marks a shift in the direction of the poem. The rhyme scheme of the octave is ABBA, ABBA, while the rhyme scheme of the sestet is CDC, DCD, or CDE, CDE. This type of sonnet is called Petrarchan sonnet or Italian sonnet. The second type of sonnet is known as the Shakespearean sonnet or English sonnet. It has a series of 3 quatrains, that is of 4 lines each, and a concluding couplet. They are written in iambic pentameter. Rhyme scheme of this type is ABAB, CD, EF, and GG. Now the next part is about Ozymandias. Who is this Ozymandias? Ozymandias represents Ramses II, the 19th dynasty, powerful ancient Egyptian pharaoh, that is king or ruler or monarch or emperor. He is said to have reigned about 2100 BC. He lived 96 years. To celebrate his ascetic victories, he erected a splendid monument. His statue sits in the desert at the site of the ancient Egyptian capital, Thebes. The statue is 57 feet high and weighed 7.25 tons. The inscription on the statue, I am Ozymandias, King of Kings, throws light on his nature, career, and life. It tells about his mighty empire and his achievements. He is a real snob. Through inscription, he challenges the onlookers to perform greater than him. But this colossal, it means massive or huge statue is subsequently battered and broken into fragments. Fragment means small parts. Thus, his glorious past and ruined present is depicted in this poem. He is ironically painted in the poem. Now we are going to study about the octave part, that is the first 8 lines of the poem. In the octave, we are know about the trunkless statue. Once the speaker of the poem meets a traveler coming from an antique or ancient land. The land may be Rome, Greece, or ancient Egypt. He tells the story of Ozymandias, the powerful king, and his ruined statue. Thus, the poem has a story within a story, a narrative within a narrative. It is a story of a monarch whose power and glory fades away with time. First, the traveler talks on an enormous statue of the great king raised on a pedestal in the desert. Unfortunately, the statue is trunkless, having no torso. Torso means trunk or upper part of the body. The statue looks very awful. Next, the traveler comments on the shattered visage or head of the statue. It is partially buried in the sand. It denotes that the whole statue is destroyed. But we don't really know what exactly happened to the statue. It's perhaps just the natural process of decay with time. Now I come to the 6th point, that is importance of the opening lines in the poem. First 2 lines of the poem explains the sublime thought of the poet. They comment on the vanity and futility of human wishes. The lines reveal the idea how brief and insignificant human life is. The lines explain that reputation, power, and glory in our life is momentary and temporary. It is just a bubble on the surface of water. Nothing remains intact, complete, and everlasting in the world of death, decay, and destruction. The dream of immortality is vain or useless, is the message of these lines. Now I come to the 7th point, which describes the facial expression of the statue. Next, the traveler comments on the visible facial expressions of the statue. The words frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command are used to describe nature of Ozymandias. They explain anger, pride, self-importance, hateful attitude, and unsympathetic temperament of the legion Ozymandias. Here point number 7 ends. Now in the 8th part, we are told about art and the skill of the sculptor. The 6th line shifts our attention from statue to the sculptor. The traveler admires the skills and art of the sculptor and calls him a perfect artist. He gets success to understand and read the passions and emotions of Ozymandias. One can easily notice them in the statue. Thus, the poet describes inner passion of the king with microscopic details. The words which yet survive suggest the immortality of his work, art, and skills. His creation is still alive on the lifeless things, that is, on the broken pieces of the statue. The sculptor's skillful hands copy and mark and portray the king's passions and emotions. The sculptor's heart feels those and inspires or feeds to make it possible, so that hands and that heart yet survive through this masterful creation. And here the octave part of the sonnet ends. Now I come to the next part, that is the sistate, and it's a point number 9, which describes Ozymandias, the king of kings. The sistate of the sonnet again shift to the statue. The traveler quotes the words written on its pedestal, that is platform or base of the statue. The inscription declares that it is the statue of Ozymandias, the king of kings. The line explains how Ozymandias is proud of his achievements and powerful empire. He thinks himself a superior emperor and calls others inferiors. He says that his deed and performance would make other rulers unhappy and gloomy. In short, he would like to say that none would of them be able to compare his power and majesty. He warns them not to hope for much greatness, as they can never cross his achievements. First 3 lines of the sistate explain proud and commanding nature of Ozymandias. The remaining part of the sistate describes the irony of Ozymandias' fate, and this is my point number 10. The last 3 lines of the sonnet comment on the irony of Ozymandias' fate. We are told here that beside the broken statue and the pedestal, there is not even a sign of any building, palace, fort, or a tower. Everything has crumbled to dust. There is nothing to indicate the achievements of which the emperor is so proud. Everywhere we notice sands. There is no trace of living creature. Thus, the vast and endless deserts mocks and ridicules the vain achievement of the king. The colossal rack hints at how the gigantic statue and the high-flying passions attached to it are dusted now. The boundless and bare and the lone and level sands stretching far away symbolizes the vastness of the time. Now in point number 11, we are going to know about the theme and form of Ozymandias. Ozymandias is a philosophical and thought-provoking sonnet written in iambic pentameter. It is a strange mixture of Petrarchan and Shakespearean sonnet. It is a satire on the vanity of human being. It is written in 1817 and published by Hunt in the Examiner in January 1818. It is different in theme and form. It deals with the shortness of earthly power rather than about love and beauty. It tells about an antique traveler and his interpretation about the shattered and lonely statue of Ozymandias. The theme centers around 4 ideas. Number 1, man is a boastful creature. Number 2, the dignity and majesty of human being is short-lived. Number 3, vastness of nature and littleness of human being. Number 4 is life is momentary or temporary and art is permanent. Now I come to the last part of the poem that concerns about the conclusion of the poem. The title of the poem informs us that the subject is the 13th century BC Egyptian king Ramses II, whom the Greeks called Ozymandias. There are two characters described in the poem. They are speaker and the traveler. The traveler comes from an antique land of Egypt. The traveler tells the speaker about a vast but ruined statue. The shattered condition of the statue comments of the existence of human being. The destroyed face of the statue sinks in the sand. Frowning and sneering tells us that one should not be boastful of himself. We are also told about the art and skills of the sculptor. He captures the king's passions and emotions. His art gives life to lifeless things like stone. The last five lines mark the inscription hammered on the pedestal of the statue. The lines also comment on selfish, arrogant dictatorship of the king. The use of irony adds the beauty of the poem. Human beings and materialistic values are seasonal and they are bound to end is the theme of this poem. Transcends art and culture, pride, significance in the natural world, and are some of the other themes of the poem. The moral of the poem is that time is relentless, it does not spare anyone. Nobody should be blinded with power, is the message given through the poem. It is an example of symbolism at its simplest. The irony of human pride and power makes the poem interesting. The title of the poem is apt, suggestive, and suitable, while the diction is so simple. The tone of the poem is glorying. In other words, we can say pride and arrogance can lead to destructions, is the moral of this poem. Thank you to spare time with me. I hope you like this video. Thanks once again.